3 disturbing true stories from haunted hotels. The following accounts were submitted by hotel staff and guests who experienced unexplainable phenomena. Names and locations have been changed for privacy, but the terror remains real. Story 1. The Chess Players of Room 237, the Grand Victorian Hotel, Salem, Massachusetts. The elevator doors slid open with a metallic groan that seemed to echo through my very bones. As the new night manager of the Grand Victorian Hotel, I thought I'd seen everything the hospitality industry could throw at me. I was dead wrong. It was my 3rd week on the job when Mrs. Chen from housekeeping approached me. Her usual composed demeanor cracked with genuine fear. "Mr. Rodriguez," she whispered, glancing around the ornate lobby, "there's something you need to see in room 237. The Victorian was a maze of crimson carpets and gilded mirrors, built in 1889 and rumored to house more than just paying guests. But I dismissed the stories as marketing gimmicks designed to attract ghost tour groups. That night, everything changed. Mrs. Chen led me down the dimly lit corridor of the 2nd floor, our footsteps muffled by the thick Persian runners. Room 237 sat at the end of the hallway, tucked away from the other suites. As we approached, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The door was slightly ajar, though our system showed the room as vacant and locked. "I cleaned this room yesterday," Mrs. Chen whispered, her voice trembling. "Everything was perfect, but this morning..." She pushed the door open, and my breath caught in my throat. In the center of the room sat an antique chess set, pieces arranged mid-game. The board was surrounded by 2 high-backed chairs, both perfectly positioned as if players had just stepped away for tea. "That chess set wasn't here yesterday," Mrs. Chen insisted. "I would have noticed it. And look at the dust patterns on the table. It's been there for weeks." I approached the board, studying the intricate wooden pieces. The game was clearly in progress, with white in a commanding position. But what made my hands shake was the guest registry I pulled up on my phone. Room 237 had been unoccupied for 6 days. Over the following weeks, the chess set became my obsession. Every morning, the pieces would be in different positions, the game progressing move by move. I started photographing the board, documenting each change. The moves were sophisticated, strategic, the work of master players. Then came the night I decided to investigate personally. At 3:17 a.m., I used my master key to enter room 237. The chess set sat in its usual place, but now I noticed something else. 2 wine glasses on the side table, still containing dark red residue. The smell of aged tobacco hung in the air, though the hotel had been smoke-free for over a decade. I sat in one of the chairs studying the board. White was winning decisively, but black had set up an elegant trap. As I reached for the black knight, preparing to make what seemed like the obvious next move, the temperature in the room plummeted. My breath became visible in the suddenly frigid air. The grandfather clock in the corner began chiming, impossible, as it had been broken for years. And then, clear as daylight, I heard it, the scraping of wood against wood. I looked down at the chessboard. The white queen had moved by itself. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I sprinted from that room like my life depended on it, my master key ring jangling with each panicked step. The next morning, I found the chess game had ended. White had won in a brilliant sacrifice that I never could have seen coming. Beside the board lay a handwritten note in elegant cursive. "Thank you for the game. Perhaps we'll play again soon. E.M. and J.R., October 13th, 1924. I researched the hotel's archives and discovered that Edmund Miles and Jonathan Reed, 2 renowned chess masters, had died in room 237 in 1924, on October 13. They'd been found at their chessboard, both apparently having suffered simultaneous heart attacks during what witnesses described as the game of their lives. The chess set disappeared the next day. Mrs. Chen swears she never removed it, and our security cameras show nothing. But sometimes, late at night, guests in the rooms adjacent to 237 report hearing the faint sound of wooden pieces moving across a board, followed by satisfied laughter from beyond the grave. I still work at the Grand Victorian, but I've never set foot in room 237 again. Some games are better left unfinished. Story 2. The Artist Studio Moonrise Resort, Asheville, North Carolina. The renovation of the Moonrise Resort was supposed to be my dream project. As the lead contractor, I'd worked on dozens of historic properties, but nothing had prepared me for what we discovered in the sub-basement. The resort, perched on a misty mountainside, had been closed for 15 years before our company was hired to restore it to its former glory. The building dated back to the 1920s, when it had served as an exclusive retreat for wealthy artists and writers escaping the chaos of city life. 3 weeks into demolition, my crew discovered something that wasn't in any of the architectural plans: a sealed door behind a false wall in the basement. The door was massive, reinforced with iron bands, and secured with an industrial lock that looked far newer than the surrounding stonework. "Boss, you need to see this," called Jake, my foreman, his voice echoing through the basement's stone corridors. "This doesn't match anything in the blueprints." I descended into the basement, my flashlight cutting through the dusty darkness. The door stood like a monolith, completely out of place among the resort's elegant Art Deco architecture. What bothered me most was the smell, paint fumes, and something else, something organic and wrong. The resort's previous owner, Mrs. Blackwood, had been evasive about many aspects of the property's history. When I called her about the door, her voice took on a sharp edge. "That room is sealed for safety reasons, asbestos concerns. Leave it alone, Mr. Patterson. Some things are better left undisturbed." But her explanation didn't satisfy me. Asbestos remediation would have been documented, and there were no hazmat warnings anywhere in the property. Against my better judgment, I hired a locksmith. What we found inside defied explanation. The room was an artist's studio frozen in time. Canvases lined the walls, depicting the same subject over and over again: a young woman with haunting eyes and flowing dark hair. But these weren't ordinary paintings. They seemed to move in my peripheral vision, the woman's expression shifting from sorrow to rage and back again. In the center of the studio sat an easel with an unfinished portrait. The woman's face was complete, but her body was only roughly sketched. Beside the easel, palette knife still in hand, lay the skeletal remains of what had once been a person. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. A second door, hidden behind a curtain of spider webs, led to a narrow staircase. The stairs descended deep into the mountain, emerging through a concealed entrance in the forest, nearly half a mile from the resort. Someone had been using this hidden studio, living beneath the resort undetected. I immediately called the police, but before they arrived, we made another chilling discovery. Fresh paint on one of the canvases, wet paint that couldn't have been more than a few hours old. The painting showed the resort as it looked today, with our construction vehicles parked outside. In the painting's foreground stood a figure watching from the tree line. The figure's face was obscured, but there was something unmistakably menacing about its posture. That night, as I lay in my temporary trailer on the construction site, I was awakened by the sound of rocks pelting the aluminum walls. Through the window, I saw shadows moving between the trees, multiple figures, all watching the resort with unnatural stillness. I grabbed my shotgun and stepped outside. "Who's there?" "This is private property." The figures melted back into the forest, but not before I caught a glimpse of pale faces and dark clothing. What terrified me most was their synchronized movement, as if they were all controlled by the same puppet master. The police found footprints the next morning, dozens of them, circling the construction site in a perfect spiral pattern. The tracks led back to the hidden forest entrance, but the tunnel had been sealed with fresh concrete, as if our mysterious watchers had erased their own escape route. Over the following weeks, workers reported tools going missing, only to find them arranged in elaborate patterns around the property. Security cameras captured shadowy figures moving through the resort at night, always just out of focus, always staying in the blind spots. The final incident occurred on a fog-shrouded Thursday evening. I was working late, reviewing blueprints in the main lobby, when I heard piano music drifting from the resort's abandoned ballroom. The melody was haunting, classical, and impossible. We disconnected the piano weeks ago. I followed the music down the darkened corridor, my flashlight beam dancing across peeling wallpaper and cobweb chandeliers. The ballroom doors stood open, revealing a sight that still haunts my dreams. The piano was playing by itself, keys depressing in perfect rhythm while the bench sat empty. But more terrifying were the dancers, translucent figures waltzing across the dusty floor, their faces the same as those in the hidden paintings. Leading them all was the woman with the haunting eyes, now somehow freed from her canvas prison. She turned to look at me, her mouth opening in a silent scream. The piano music stopped abruptly, and the dancers vanished like morning mist. I quit the project the next day. The Moonrise Resort remains unfinished, its renovation abandoned after 3 different construction companies refused to continue work. The basement has been permanently sealed, but locals report seeing lights moving through the resort's windows on foggy nights, and the faint sound of piano music echoing through the mountain valleys. Some art, it seems, refuses to stay buried. Story 3. The Collector's Penthouse. The Meridian Tower Hotel, Chicago, Illinois. 47 floors above the Chicago streets, I thought I'd found the perfect escape from my crumbling marriage. The Meridian Tower's penthouse suite cost more than my mortgage payment, but after 6 months of marriage counseling failures, I needed space to think. I should have chosen a different floor, any other floor. The elevator's ascent to the 47th floor felt endless, my ears popping as we climbed through the clouds. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor, accessible only by private elevator and reserved exclusively for VIP guests. According to the concierge, I was the first person to book it in over 2 years. "Maintenance issues," he'd explained with a nervous smile. "Nothing serious, of course. Just some electrical problems we've been working to resolve." The suite was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city, minimalist decor that screamed expensive taste, and enough space to house a small army. But something felt wrong from the moment I stepped inside. The air was too still, too quiet, as if the room were holding its breath. I'd planned to spend 3 days alone. No phone calls, no interruptions. Just me and my thoughts. By the second hour, I was already questioning that decision. The first sign of trouble was the photographs. Scattered throughout the penthouse were framed images of various hotel guests, Candid shots taken without their knowledge. People sleeping, showering, eating room service meals in their underwear. Each photo was dated and numbered, as if part of some grotesque collection. I called the front desk immediately. "There are some disturbing photographs in the penthouse suite. They need to be removed." "Photographs, sir? That's unusual. We'll send housekeeping right up." But housekeeping never came. When I called again an hour later, the desk clerk claimed there was no record of my previous call. Worse, when I tried to leave, the elevator wouldn't respond to my key card. The emergency phone in the elevator car rang endlessly with no answer. I was trapped 47 floors above the city, surrounded by evidence of systematic surveillance in violation of privacy. That's when I found the hidden room. Behind a section of seemingly solid wall, I discovered a narrow door disguised as part of the paneling. Inside was a surveillance center that would have impressed the NSA. Dozens of monitors showing live feeds from hotel rooms throughout the building. Not just the public areas, but inside guest rooms, bathrooms, private spaces where people believed they had privacy. Recording equipment hummed quietly in climate-controlled cabinets. Thousands of tapes and hard drives were meticulously labeled with dates, room numbers, and disturbingly personal notes. Mrs. Peterson, adultery evidence, room 1247, Senator Williams, cocaine use, room 3405, Judge Martinez, gambling debts discussed, room 2156. But the most chilling discovery was a leather-bound ledger titled The Collection. Inside were detailed profiles of hundreds of hotel guests, complete with personal information that went far beyond what any hotel registration would require. Social security numbers, family members' names, financial records, medical histories, secrets that could destroy lives. I was reading about blackmail payments and political coercion when I heard the elevator arrive. Footsteps echoed through the penthouse, measured, deliberate, coming closer. I quickly closed the ledger and slipped back into the main suite, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Mr. Davidson?" The voice was cultured, elderly, with a slight European accent. "I believe you've discovered something that doesn't belong to you." A man in an expensive suit emerged from the elevator, flanked by two others who had the unmistakable bearing of professional security. The leader was elderly but sharp-eyed, with silver hair and the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Mr. Cornelius Thorne, the true owner of this hotel. You've stumbled into my private study, and I'm afraid that creates something of a problem." I backed toward the windows, my mind racing. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a hotel guest." "Oh, but you're so much more than that now, Mr. Davidson. You've seen my collection, my life's work. 40 years of gathering insurance policies, you might call them. Information is the most valuable currency in the world, don't you think?" He gestured to one of his men, who produced a thick folder with my name on it. "David Davidson, 34, marketing executive, recently separated from wife Jennifer due to your gambling addiction and the $47,000 you've embezzled from your company's client accounts. Shall I continue?" My blood turned to ice. The gambling debt was real, but I'd covered my tracks at work. No one knew about the missing money. No one could know. "How did you—" "Knowledge is power, Mr. Davidson. And I've been collecting knowledge for a very long time. The question now is, how do we resolve this situation? You've seen too much to simply walk away." The next few hours were a nightmare of veiled threats and impossible choices. Thorne offered me two options: become part of his operation, helping to expand his surveillance network to other hotels, or face exposure of my financial crimes, along with some carefully edited security footage that would destroy my reputation forever. "I have rooms prepared on the 15th floor," he said with a terrible smile. "Comfortable accommodations for my employees. You'll find the work quite rewarding, and your debt problems will simply disappear." I spent the night in that penthouse, pacing like a caged animal, searching for a way out. Every window was reinforced, every exit monitored. But just before dawn, I found my chance. The fire alarm system, designed to override all security protocols in case of emergency, responded perfectly to the small electrical fire I started in the surveillance room. As sprinklers soaked the hidden chamber and smoke filled the penthouse, emergency responders flooded the building. In the chaos of evacuation, I slipped away. But not before I'd grabbed several pieces of evidence: photographs, ledger pages, anything that might prove what I'd discovered. I went to the police, to the FBI, to journalists. But the Meridian Tower Hotel had no record of a Mr. Cornelius Thorne. The penthouse surveillance room had been damaged in an electrical fire and showed no signs of the equipment I'd described. My evidence had somehow vanished from my hotel room safe. Officially, I'd suffered a nervous breakdown brought on by marital stress and work pressure. The charges of embezzlement were quietly dropped after my company accounts were mysteriously restored to their proper balances. I still live in Chicago, but I never stay in hotels anymore. And sometimes late at night, I receive phone calls from that cultured European voice. "The offer remains open, Mr. Davidson. There's always room in our collection for someone with your talents." I always hang up, but I know he's still watching, still collecting, still adding to his catalog of human secrets from his perch high above the city. The Meridian Tower stands as elegant as ever, welcoming guests who have no idea that their privacy ended the moment they stepped through the revolving doors. Some prisons, it seems, come with room service and a view. These accounts have been compiled from witness testimonials and available evidence. The hotels mentioned continue to operate, though management was unavailable for comment. If you've experienced similar phenomena at any hospitality establishment, document everything and trust your instincts. Sometimes the most luxurious accommodations come with the highest price. Have you ever felt like you were being watched during a hotel stay? Share your experiences below, and remember, check your room carefully. You never know what might be hidden behind the walls.